to record. So I'm the Honorable Lady Gesa von Wellenstein. I'm really great with herding cats, and I got people together to do that Marshals in Training program. And this, again, it's about a year old now, and we're meeting every first Tuesday of the month. As when the winter season gets a little bit done and daylight will be longer, I probably move those meetings again till 8 p.m. instead of 7 p.m. because if there's daylight at 7, I'm probably still be out in the barn. But while it's dark at 6 o'clock, we are meeting a little bit earlier because I go to bed early. So times will change, and I know this will make a lot of things easier for individuals who come from California in other time zones, because I know you're 3 or 2 hours behind us, and it's still in the middle of the day for you. So today we are going to talk about event planning. And my 2 cents, Kathleen, you like the 7 p.m. because you're fall asleep. Yeah, I'm the same way, but if there's still daylight till 10 p.m., I'm okay with starting a little bit later. So it's not right now. Okay, so we are starting with the event planning. And I do understand not every kingdom has a Marshal in Training handbook. At the end of last year, I talked with Joe, who is our CEO, and just to review a little bit what we have been doing. And actually, I was not aware that Ethelmark is one of the kingdoms who has a Marshal in Training handbook. And as we are working on other globalizing for the known world logs and activity books, I thought maybe creating a suggestion for a Marshal in Training, equestrian Marshal in Training handbook might be something also to put together. I can see where the feedback is. And I do need to say I will be going to Golf Wars. I don't know whoever will be there. And I know you're there, Maria. And
I'll be there.
My class about the Marshal training is Wednesday, somewhere in the morning. I need to double check. But
9 a.m.
There you go, 9 a.m. Wednesday morning. And I will try to gather more information from different kingdoms, as this is a great opportunity for me to gather with a lot of people. If you're not at Golf Wars, don't worry about it. I'm always okay to get suggestions. You can PM me on Facebook or email me. Both of them works. My goal is to make our equestrian activities easier for all of us Marshals, event planners, participants, take some of the pain and frustration out of it and globalize some of the things we do, especially for the ones who interact with different kingdoms and traveling from one kingdom to the next. Okay, so event planning. And because this is not a standardized society regulations, most of that is from the society handbook as well. But there are some kingdom, or can be some kingdom specifications. So always double check with your KEO, or if you're the KEO, let me know if your kingdom has something specific. We are currently working on gathering all the different information from the different kingdoms, but we are not done yet. Our goal was to be done with the inter-kingdom rules and guidelines by March. So we still have a little bit, but it is in the works. So planning the event, some of those requirements is a site inspection, any kind of scheduler issues, and we talk about each point as we go along with those PowerPoints. Notifying your KEO the ordering the insurance, and then any kind of paperwork you might need by your state or the site. And again, as the SCA, we are not responsible or requiring paperwork unless there's specific regulation or the site requires it. And then any kind of notification or announcement, local vets, especially for Motor Day event or farrier, who could be local, maybe let the farrier know you're planning a site with 30 horses in case something would happen and you need to have somebody on call. In the next 2 months, we're doing the part 2 and part 3. Part 2 is all about authorization forms, waiver signatures. I updated it also with possible suggestion tools about checking your authorization cards, making sure weapons are in functional orders, and going through some of the safety issues. We've been talking in different groups over the year about it. And then number 3 is that fun part where it's doing all the great paperwork that is due for the marshals, the event reporting, quarterly reports, and everything else. But these are the next 2 months coming up, not today. So every time we are planning of hosting an official event, a demo, or a practice, any of those events need to have or should have a sponsored group, a safe site for holding equestrian activities. And I think we have only equestrians currently on the Zoom. I didn't hear anybody who's, or didn't see anybody Zoom in, not an equestrian.
I've done I've autocrated a bunch of events as an autocrat and not as an equestrian.
But as an equestrian, you kind of know what to look for. I was hoping we maybe get some autocrats who do not have horse knowledge, what to look for it. And I'll talk about like site requirements in a little bit. I was just hoping that maybe takes some of that apprehension away for people who are not accustomed to invite horses to an event and what to look for.
So I think for them, at least from what I've had people ask me about, was, you know, what is required as far as site accommodations versus what is preferable or the most ideal situation. And I think that that's been the biggest difference, and it tends to change kingdom to kingdom sometimes, but that's the biggest, those are the first questions I tend to get from
and I
people.
love if they call me up or email me and ask. Most of the time I see an event at a great park that is equestrian friendly, and I'm like, why you didn't invite the equestrians? Oh, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Because this is not what they do. So sometimes I feel we get forgotten just because we're not always in the foreground of a lot of people, at least in Ethelmark. I don't know other kingdoms.
Oh no, it's the same, at least in Callantyre. And that's why I taught a couple of classes that is just equestrian logistics, just geared for event stewards. Like that's,
yeah, and maybe we need to talk about some of that. Maybe I can learn some of those classes to take out to my autocrats in our kingdom.
Definitely.
So we do need insurance. We need a sponsoring group. It needs to be a safe site for equestrian activities. And then basically you need to have an equestrian marshal who is willing to act as an equestrian marshal in charge. For any time in the equestrian marshal, you need to be active with your membership and with your authorization. You cannot be expired in any of those. We had a lot of exceptions and right in some of the rules, at least in Ethelmark, because pandemic, we didn't have anything, everything opened up, everybody was expired. But by this year, actually for Ethelmark, it was July 18th last year, we stopped making exceptions. So you need to be current as a marshal, and you need to be an SCA member to be a marshal And then obviously to be a marshal in charge, you have to be a marshal period for that. So,
Can I ask a question? I know we had this discussion last year, and I'm sorry I missed a few of the meetings, but are we going to do an authorization for ground crew?
So some people, some kingdom have that. I think Atlantia used to have it. I do not know if Atlantia still has it. We in Ethelmont, we don't have a separate authorization for ground crew, but that is recommended, but it's not mandated by the society. Your kingdom can do that.
Frontier has both a senior and a junior ground crew authorization and required training to have it.
Okay. Awesome. So Antioch has it. I think Atlantia had it. I'm not sure about Mid-Rome anymore. And I
don't think Palantir ever had it.
I haven't heard about it in the Mid-Realm any times lately.
You did not hear it?
No, I've been playing in the Mid-Realm for a few years and I've never heard about ground crew authorization, so I don't think they do it anymore.
Yeah, and I know some things change, and that is something, while I didn't see you zoomed in, Rosamund, so I appreciate you coming in because you're part of that gathering that information from the different kingdoms.
Correct. So I'm just starting. So far, I've only found on tier. We'll see if others have it. I am collecting that information.
Yeah. So
East does not have any requirements other than wear closed-toed shoes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And yeah, for us, I mean, we do get before an event that Marshal who is hosting that event or sponsoring that activity, I should say, not the event, normally has a crew meeting, especially for jousting, or where you need to have a lot of ground crew, and they're going over the rules and regulations. But we don't have an official authorization in Ethelmont. But
I know when I ran River Wars, I actually did a ground crew training as part of my marshal and training process, and I actually have authorization forms from them that they completed like I guess a ground crew training. So
awesome. And Ed, was that you from Antia? Do you have the guidelines for the ground crew authorizations?
It's in our rules, but send me a message on Facebook and I'll cut and paste you a copy of them.
Okay, if your rule book is online, I can download it as well.
Well, I have one thing that's changing in that we have opened up the ground crew authorization for senior ground crew to 14 and over now for youth, so that they can be more involved.
Awesome, I like that. Okay, I'm just making myself some notes. Okay, so that basically that Marshal would be in charge of ordering the insurance, doing the paperwork, and the paperwork would be every paperwork that needs to be done to get that event started and on the books. So not checking the authorization cards, those would be done the day it is happening, the event itself. One of the things we talked a lot about that, we as Joe and I, we talked a lot about for the marshal in charge, the equestrian marshal in charge, to really delegate. For having an event and being the autocrat and the marshal in charge is exhausting and almost mind-breaking. I will not do it because I will not leave the horse area when horses are on site, and to autocrat any other event where there might be heavy fighting or some food issues or some toilet issue, I will not leave the horse area. So for me, I always have an autocrat, somebody who is dealing with the event, I am dealing with the horses. And my suggestion is, unless it's a horse-only event, so if I do a demo and a practice, I am dealing with the horses, but I don't have heavy fighting and fencing and ANS and food and whatever presented as well. I only have horses. That's the only time I don't delegate. But as soon there is more involved than a practice or a demo, there's even when there's food involved and we're serving lunch during an all-day demo or practice or a clinic. I do a lot of long hour clinics with a lunch break. I have somebody delegated to take care of lunch because, again, as a equestrian marshal in charge, you can't leave the horses. And to take care of anything additionally, for me, it's stressful and exhausted. So I would never ever recommend it. It's discouraged officially. But of course, you can do this if you feel you're capable of doing it. So go ahead.
Yes, I know that, like I said, Kiana she was helping me to get my Marshal warrant. When we worked through River War, I actually met with the autocrat and I told him I needed someone from his staff to come by like every hour or so just to make sure everything was okay. But I also asked him for an MOL to help me with the scoring. And we had a very young MOL, so she was very eager. And so now I have an MOL that can help out at events, which made my life so much easier. I didn't have to do scoring. She did all the scoring for me.
That's awesome. And we talk about it again when we run the event. I would suggest that MOL. We as equestrians, I have not been spoiled with having an MOL. I recently started to ask for it just because it's difficult to do everything. And if you don't need to calculate and telling the score, especially if you have multiple challenges, if you only do one, then it's not as difficult. Like for the Baronial Championship, we didn't do anything but the championship that day. But if it's all day and you're having a joust and archery and challenge course, you never get a break. It's too much. So MOLs are a great idea. And if you can have them for the equestrians and you have somebody already knowing stuff, that's awesome. I do have some spreadsheets for score taking that I put out on the next week when we run the event for suggestions on how to score like a joust or a challenge course, how to do spreadsheets for that, just in case somebody struggles with that. So that will be also next week or next month when we're going for the running an event.
So are these slides somewhere going to be somewhere?
Yeah, they should be already posted in the SEA equestrian files, but I changed it a little bit because we added some information over the year. So I will upload this after I'm done today as well. I have under the SEA Facebook page, SEA equestrian Facebook page, I will upload the updated files. I would put like this year's label on it. Like should be part 1 MIT training. Should be labeled in it. But if you don't find it, PM me and I can email it to you.
Okay, thank you.
So again, one of the big things really is that you need to have a warned equestrian marshal to run the event or the demo or any kind of practice for that. So if you do not have a marshal present or you don't have insurance present, it is not an official SEA event. It is a practice and you cannot use SEA in any way or form. We cannot be liable. So if you have your barony doing a parade in any kind of town functions and you decide to join the parade with your horses, they have to have equestrian insurance and the marshal in place. If you are the marshals, then you obviously can ride with your horse. So for the equestrian marshal in charge, what they really need to do, first, they really need to visit the site if you do not know about that site. Something I basically did to make it easier for some of the marshals in Ethelmark, I started a log last year to comment on different sites that are generally used for our kingdom's events, and basically made a log out that's suitable for conducting equestrian activities. Since our kingdom started to do more hitching as well, and we have carriages now involved, I also look if the site we are using or that riding area we're using, if they're accessible by carriage. For example, last year spring, we had one site that was great, field area, grass grown area. We could have done great equestrian activity, but it was a gravel path, then like ditch right besides, like a drainage ditch right after the path, and then they had logs pinned to the ground. There were like 15 inches logs, really nice big tree logs to surround that grass area. Any horse can step over it, but I was like, I don't consider it suitable for carriages because they needed to go down to the ditch, hop over a log, and they were pinned down logs. They were not like we could just lift them off and have carriages riding over. So if I have anything on that site that I, as an equestrian, would find questionable, maybe not an even
ridden.
Excuse me? I didn't hear you. I thought I heard something, sorry. So
yeah, Tim still has Twilight, I think.
I wasn't sure if that's echo or somebody asking. So if there's anything that I find questionable on that site, maybe in an uneven field or gravel driveway for the trailer park or small tiny trailer park, it's only back in parking availability, not pull around for longer rigs or limited parking spaces or whatever I find that could be causing issues in any forms for footing, for parking, trailering, trucks getting stuck, rabbit holes, groundhog holes, whatever it is, I post it on the practice site or the event site. I basically say, it is a riding arena with good footing, or it is a grass field with groundhog holes, which would not be safe. So if there's no turnaround, it's back in parking only, then people can make up their mind, is that site okay for my horse and I? If you, for example, have no stalls available, you need to build your own fence, or water is really far away, or anything else. So I just mentioned all of that. So I'm checking for water, I'm checking for electricity and what is there. I normally make pictures of the event so people can have a visual, as well as I do go and post it. Actually, I think I have that all here. So I'm really posting everything specifically for that event. And then if people have any kind of questions or concerns, they can call me and we can have a discussion, or I can check specifically for that. Maria.
So I just, oh, am I muted?
No.
No, you're on there.
I just had so I have we have issue in Callantyre right now with sites, And that's our biggest problem. And that's it's a big problem, I think, for a lot of other kingdoms too. But what I did is I researched a bunch of different sites, and you can actually create your own Google map. And within that Google map, you can pinpoint them. You can, if they have a website or any available information, you can make little notes. I've arranged it, I put previous sites on there that we've used. I have arranged it from camping sites to day sites, whether they're equestrian friendly, camping friendly, if they'd be good for like a crown or coronation, things like that. Another thing, as far as site walkthroughs, I got a group about 3 hours south of me, connected with a historic society site recently. I haven't been out there before, but I've seen a bunch of pictures, and I advised the autocrat to contact them and do a walkthrough. And he actually sent me video and photos and stuff like that while he was doing his walkthrough, to try to figure out if it would be equestrian friendly, because the whole point was to have equestrian at this particular event, which is funny because they don't have an active equestrian marshal, but apparently my helium hand happened, and apparently I'm MICing that event. So I kind of told, it's very, very primitive, but it's something that we've worked with in the past in Callantyre. So we'll probably.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so it's just, so if you're not immediately available when they do their site walkthrough, or if you're far away, like in my case, you can always ask the autocrat or whoever's doing the walkthrough to take pictures and video and stuff like that, because everybody's got their phone on them.
Right.
So
I like the idea with Google Map. I just have a regular log, and I asked autocrats, or I went there with different, or I know some of the locations because I've been around for a day or two. But if there's water, accessible electricity and stuff like that, and I basically created last year the log and asked other people to continue with that. But I like the Google Map. A lot of times I forget about that internet thing, because you can see actually everything on Google Map if you need to go, if there's shelter or what there is. And
sometimes they're a little outdated, but for the most part, yeah, you get a good idea.
You know enough, I think, if it's worth a try for somebody to check into it, or phone call or whatever. But I also need to say, because I had that happen twice last year, there was water on site when we checked it to schedule the event, and they say they would turn it on by spring. In June or so, we had the event, and water was not working out of the faucets as we had, because of whatever happened over the winter time. So we had horses present, and we had the day before the event, because I didn't go down double time and checked and actually really tried. I just took the word, yeah, water's turned on. And then nobody ever used that faucet before. And I'm like, well, we're there overnight. Water would be nice.
Yeah.
So double check, even you do all of that stuff prior to the event, and you get it scheduled, get it on the books. My experience would be go back out in reasonable time, that things can be fixed or troubleshot before the event happens. So that really would be one of my suggestions. Especially if you've seen the field in the winter and it was not mowed, and they say, yeah, we will mow it, walk it off. Well, we in Pennsylvania, we have groundhogs all over. I learned to walk my fields thoroughly, not just take it for granted, because that's a broken foot from the horse, not from, well, it could be a bad ankle for you too. But you don't want to have horses running somewhere and then suddenly have groundhog holes all over the place.
Right.
If there's, or because they mow it the day before, and then you finally see how it actually really looks. So one of the suggestions is, if somebody asks you, it's kind of what Maria just mentioned, ask you to be an equestrian marshal in charge, or you're planning that, choose a site or agree to a site that logistically is able for you to get there. Even 3 hours, yes, you can drive, but it's a long drive. And we normally, most of us have a job, we don't have the time for that. Really make sure, take something you really can go there a couple times, check it out, get ready. Don't take something that becomes a burden because of logistics and availability. So that would be something, really be careful what you agree to, because so Ethelmark is huge, 6-hour drive. It's easy for doing something on the other side of my kingdom. And before I say yes, I normally say, well, I help you, but I can't be in charge, because I don't drive 6 hours 4 times just to see if you have water turned on.
I will say, for the record, I was going to that event anyway.
Yeah, just saying.
Because there's a peerage happening at that event that I need to be there for. So.
But if you're not experienced in it and you're kind-hearted and you're willing to say yes and help out, just something to think about. I don't want to discourage you, and it's great that you do it, but always make sure you know the time you will need to invest to do it. And sometimes a site inspection is 20 minutes for a 3 or 4 hour drive.
Yeah.
Oh, I have here. So these are all. And for me, the fields, or like Maria mentioned, the site is primitive. We doing historical reenactment. They didn't have electricity and running water and green mowed straight fields and riding arenas. I'm totally, for me, I'm fine with my horses to build my own fence and to stay in my horse trailer without electricity or running water. I'm okay with that, but I do also know some people, well, in a 1-day event is different than a 10-day event. I don't want to carry water for 10 days. But so for me, there's a minimum for an arena size, 65 to 180 long, but we can make things happen in different dimensions. We just need to plan accordingly. So if it's not that minimum suggestion, see what you can do. And I've been like in arenas that were built in an L shape at somebody's place, and in the middle they had the barn, and you just basically needed to do your games around it, and the jousting list was diagonal. Worked out great. But first when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's gonna be interesting. But it's just fine. We just sometimes really need to go and be open-minded to some things, and not that typical nice white fenced in riding arena. We sometimes get used to it.
The height is also important too, Gesa, for anything with
Yeah.
lances. I've seen some, there's something hanging down that you didn't notice that doesn't look like it would ever come into play, and then a lance hits it. That's a
And
heater
Especially
hanging
with
from an indoor arena.
arenas, you don't want to hit rafters.
Right.
Well, we had the rafters, but I think Jordan was present when we did a demo, and they had the rafters were, I think, okay, but they had lights suspended from it, and we need to try to build the list between the lights.
Yeah,
So
it ended
when
up
we
being
were riding, you
diagonal.
would not hit the lights, but if you did not lower it fast enough, you will hit a light. You could salute, but then you needed to lower faster or lower faster, otherwise we hit the lights. So yeah, I think you were present on that one.
Yeah.
So yes, that's something, good suggestion. So if you have an arena and you're planning to do a joust, which is nice long equipment that is going straight up, look at the ceiling. Something that is also included for us in Ethelmark, and I think society has recommendations as the barrier for the equestrian event, to have a fence or rope, some sort of barrier between the horse activity, that means the games, not the possession, but for all games you're planning to put on, to have some kind of barrier there. And that is for keeping the horses away from the audience. My experience is not as much with the SCA, because I didn't have any issues ever with SCA observers coming to equestrian practice. They were not respectful to keep the boundaries. But if there's non-horse people with children, sometimes the children go under the barrier because they're sitting right by that fence, by that rope. And children, if the horse, and we had that happen with non-SCA jousting performance, where horses were like really cantering around the list to say hi or bye, and they got really close to the fence on the corners. Really making sure that you have proper barriers and kids don't go not hanging on the fence, nor right underneath of the fence, that they can see better. But again, I didn't have it ever any issues with the SCA, non-SCA community events more often. But it is recommended to keep the horses fenced in. There is instructions out how, if you don't have a sign that it has already a fenced in equestrian arena, how to build barriers to keep the spectators on the horses separately. What I also do when it is a crowded place and you need to ride from your horse camp to the riding arena, I have some people delegated to make sure spectators are not crossing while the riders entering the arenas or riding to the arenas. Most of the time when we had, where I was on SCA setup, we didn't have as much of an issue, except on one place where everything was really localized and the riding arena was in the center. I made sure when we saddled up and rode into the riding arena, and I need to say that was a joust, so we all was full in armor. I had people barricading the riding into the arena, just to make sure nobody thinks they need to sneak right in front of the horse and anything happens. T-posts, wooden posts. A lot of times I have white fence posts, depending on what ground I have in the ground, and put PVC over it, or wood posts. I created wood posts. I can put an area fence around it. There's a lot of different ways we can do temporary fence nowadays. So it needs to be sturdy enough. So should anything ever happen, a horse gets loose, some horse gets spooked, that it is a barrier and not just a different hazard in our way for that. Notifying the KEO, I'm horrible with it, and I'm so glad she's not on Zoom with us today. I always forget. I'm so used to doing my own stuff. It is good courtesy to let your KEO and your group know. I do tell my local group I have a new practice or a new clinic or something else going on. I'll let them know. But a lot of times I forget to tell my KEO. She's just really lenient and forgiving. I have not been yelled at. Maybe I would learn if she would yell more at me. So it is common courtesy just to, hey, say I'm planning this, because if anything happens, and your KEO should know this is going on. And like my KEO, they're normally really great in giving you advice. They've done it before. They maybe know the site. They can give you some pointers in case they think you need it or not. If you do have an event outside of your group location, it's also great practice and courtesy to let that barony know and asking for permission. Hey, I'm out of Barony. Do you mind if I use that arena for that? Ed, you had a question?
Yeah, and on tier, it is a requirement of the rules that they have to inform the KEO of all activities.
And it's
if
in
there's
town here too.
It is
if any
actual
marshals are,
It definitely is, and absolutely. And again, if my KEO would be a little bit more strict and yell at me, maybe I would remember. It is just, I'm horrible in letting her know. Communication sometimes is not my big strength.
Yeah, I'm fairly confident that at the SCA level, it is required to inform the KEO of any equestrian official activities happening.
Yes, it definitely is to notify. Again, it's just one of my downfalls I have. I should put that on a Zoom recording. I'm gonna get yelled at now. She's just too nice. And then one of the things we have is basically also the courtesy with scheduling issues. Not to schedule something while something else is already in the books. We have within 15 miles of another equestrian event. So if I have something I want to do, and I know already there's something else going on, it's not really good to take customers or participants away from something that's already scheduled. Same with larger events that's going on, and while Golf Wars is happening next month, it's a great example. So when we do schedule something, really trying not to schedule against a large inter-kingdom war. Pensic, Golf, Estella War, Mounted War Games is also one of those. And for equestrians, I also have, because Ohio is so, Columbus is so close to us, and Harrisburg, if the Equine Expo or so is going on, you don't get a lot of equestrians coming, because a lot of people just have plans, or it's a custom ritual for them to go to the horse expos, and then it might not be the greatest weekend to schedule something for that. And also for me, when I schedule events, if there's something that you do want to have the royals participate, check on their schedules, where they may be already committed to, even if it's not close by. But if they're already committed to a different crown event, and I will ask them as well, just be mindful of some of those things that are already going on. And then ordering insurance. We had last year a great Zoom call about insurance, and I learned a lot from Louise and the insurance. We do need to have insurance in place and activated, plus a marshal on site to have an official riding event in the SCA. If you don't have a marshal, or you do not have to have an active insurance, there is not an official event happening. So it needs to be that we have to have the insurance in place. If you have any questions, consult your KEO, your SEO. It is not a good practice just to say it's an unofficial event to avoid getting insurance. And insurance instructions, I have that on here, and I have the link in here as well, a couple slides down on how to order it. It's all online. I find Louise very workable. I never had an issue since she took over from Renee. So it's basically you just fill out the form, and you need to ask the insurance 30 days in advance. They have in here timeline between 30 or 40 days. It changes sometimes. Currently, I asked Louise, it's still on 30 days prior. Prior to a pandemic, it was 45 days. Or you pay up to $175 in late fee. And that number can change too. I'm not, but you need to go, and this is the documents you can download, and you just fill it out. And you need to go and ask basically what the site requires. So on the insurance form, when you're asked or you order that insurance, there can be that additional insured. If you are not the site owner, you maybe use somebody else's barn, maybe a park or anything else. A lot of times they do like to be additionally insured. That means there's an additional protection of that insurance policy that extends to that property owner on that certificate. So you do pay extra for it, but you have that additional insurance in there. So if you have an event that has fighting and other events going on, and that is normally $50. If you have then equestrians, that's an additional $50. So you basically need to go and put in, you're asking for equestrian insurance. If you have golf carts or boats or other items in there, that's also additional insurance, but that's normally not concerning us too much. And then
I thought events were free and equestrian was 50. And additional insured might be another 50.
Yes, so you have that, and that is some of the changes right now they're just working on. So if that barn owner or the event place owner, if I understood that correctly, if the owner does not want to be additionally insured, you pay the $50 for the equestrian. If they want to have that additional insurance for their event, and then the equestrian is $100.
That is also my understanding.
And we did learn in our, that's just the website. Let's see where I have it. I'm flip-flopping. I thought I had it in here, but I can just maybe talk about it. Oh yeah, here. So we also learned, and I think that was fabulous. If you need to cancel your event and you reschedule it, the insurance would like to have 30 days before the rescheduling, but you do not need to reorder the insurance. You basically, if this weekend didn't work, but you're doing it next month at the same time, same place, same people involved, you just had to reschedule, then you just inform the insurance, and theoretically without additional charge, you can go and just have it for the new rescheduled date. You don't need to, you just do an addendum. You don't need to ask for a new insurance cover. And I think that is great, as well. If you have a regular practice site, let's say you're using your barn to practice all the time, and you're doing every first weekend of the month, you're doing practice. You can do the entire calendar year. Insurance goes from January till December. You can put all weekends or the Sundays or whenever, whatever day, on that insurance request. Should you plan to do a summer event and need a multiple day event cover, you can do that for no additional cost on the same insurance request. So if you know in December what you're planning for the following year, and you're putting all of your practices plus your summer event on one insurance request, you only have one fee. Even if it's a multiple day event, so long the site, the owner, the marshal in charge does not change, and you don't add any other risk factors like golf carts and other things to it. It can be all done within one form. So I thought that was really, it's a lot of pre-planning, but you also can add later a day. So if you don't know what really goes happening in the fall, because whatever happens in 9 months, who knows? You can also add a day. You will just need to fill out an addendum to the insurance, not ask for a new insurance form. So that is all was new to us, or to me at least, when we had that meeting with Louise, who is the vice director of the insurance corporation from the SEA, as I remember. So she gave us great information. She was very open to any questions, and she was like, if in doubt, email her and she will talk through you what you need or not, or she is willing to talk with the property owner about liability, what is covered or not. We do not, as of right now, have any kind of approval to get a copy of the SEA insurance policy itself. I asked for it because I tried to do an event with overnight, and that owner's insurance, actually the agent wanted to see the SEA policy, what is covered, if that's too much of a liability for the farm owner. So we do not give those out. And as of right now, that was in beginning of January. So right now there's still a hold on that, but Louise wanted to check into that as well. Again, those all the documents are online. All the information is also online. Insurance at SCA.org. It's a great way to get started. And again, I never had an issue. It takes sometimes a little bit depending on how busy they are, but I never had any kind of complications with anything since we reopened. I think Louise started a year and a half ago within that to take over from Renee. So I only can talk positive about it. Real quick back about the differences of official and unofficial practices. Every time you don't have a marshal or you don't have the insurance in place, it will be an unofficial practice. And two things, basically, if anything happens, SEA insurance is obviously not covering anything because there's no insurance coverage. So why would their insurance cover anything? And if you have a marshal or not in place, it doesn't really matter because it's just an equestrian event with medieval stuff. It has nothing to do with the SEA. That also means on an unofficial practice, you cannot be a representative of the SEA. You can't say, this is what we do. You can say, oh, you can Google it. There's people who do this actively. It's called that barony or that organization. That you can Google it if you're interested, but you cannot promote it and say, we are the SEA if you don't have the marshal or the insurance in place. If you have a marshal in place, but you don't have insurance, you cannot authorize any new riders or any new activities. And I'm fighting with some people in our kingdom who tell me that other disciplines in our kingdom apparently can be authorized in unofficial practices. We do not. If I am seeing you right because you're at the same barn, I cannot sign off on authorization papers. You need to be an authorized and official practice as well. There need to be 2 marshals signatures, 2 marshal presence and observing for an initial authorization. I've coupled people since pandemic who are really trying to persuade me otherwise. And I'm like, you always can talk to the KEO if you don't like that. I can't fill it out. And I'm not sure if they talked to her or not. I haven't heard anything back.
I actually had the opposite problem. My KEO was not allowing authorizations at official practices. So that's been a fun year.
May I know the reason why?
I don't think there is a good reason why. So
Oh.
I'm just waiting out his term, and once we have a new KEO, I'll go back to doing it the way we're supposed to.
Isn't Gwen still
In, Ont-
KO?
I'm not Middle
in Ont-
Kingdom.
Oh,
in
I just play there
Ontario,
a lot.
our September Crown is our equestrian championship, and the Crown does not want authorizations at that event.
I think it's totally reasonable to have a specific event have a request to not make authorizations, but I don't think it's reasonable to say you can't get authorized at an official practice when we've gotten the insurance and we have marshals present.
Yeah.
and I don't know if that was for that individual or anything else. I don't know anything around about it, but and there might. So for me, and it's sometimes difficult, and I run into this sometimes because I'm primarily the active equestrian marshal in our kingdom. And a lot of actually everything basically in the last 5-6 years is happening around Pittsburgh. We have new marshals now thanks to Jordan becoming marshal last year. Yeah. So we have 2 marshals down here, but it was difficult. So normally you as your marshal should not authorize your own student. But it's difficult. I run the practices, I do the clinics, I do the events, I have everybody here. And I'm just like, if I'm not one of the marshals, there was no other marshals. I had other marshals coming in from the Midwest, from Atlanta. People out of retirement kind of was helping me out with marshalling and zooming in. Because I was like, I can promote, but I can't do it by myself. So I really went into, like, I literally can't authorize my own husband within your family. There's some dual relationship kind of things. And I got, and really to be aware of that. And that should be for all marshals. I still believe I have an ethical code. If I don't think you're safe on a horse, I will not authorize you. My friend or not, I will let you know. But I would not sign something because as a marshal, you sign an authorization. Always think about you provided that you have that responsibility. This person can go out anywhere and ride because you signed that document. Make sure you find them safe enough. And I authorized people who were really safe on that horse, and then they showed up at a different event with a different horse. And I'm like, you need to leave the jousting list. That horse is not ready. He was still kind of safe, but that horse was not. So there's a lot of gray area in it as well, but make good decisions for that. Always thinking about, do you want to participate in an event with that person you're authorizing? And do you feel comfortable to say that person is safe enough?
Yes, I've got a quick question, if you don't mind.
Whenever
authorizations are done, is it the horse and rider combo, or is it is just the rider, and then if there is a concern about a horse, that's whenever you intervene?
So, and you will go if you stay with us, Kelly. So if you remember that April event, there was somebody from Ohio team there who was running with his black horse crazily around. I think you were there, Kelly.
Probably. I at least helped if I was not.
That was April 2nd last year. We had like 7 people from Ohio or 6 people
Oh,
from Ohio
yes.
showing up.
I agree.
There was one
Yes.
young guy or young adult on a black speedy horse.
I remember.
He was not safe. He tried to control his horse, but he didn't keep distance. He was running through the groups. He needed to be talked to. That would be a good example of he was not worried about it. He thought he had his horse under control, but for the group itself, he was an example of not being safe. because we had children there. They were scared to ride, to be on a horse, because he was running his horse that way.
Thank you for the example.
So while you were present, that was, and we don't have that a lot where I really was like, you need to go and calm your horse somewhere else or stand within the group. You cannot run through the crowd, because he was zigzagging between the parked horses and where we were standing. So that was a good example for somebody who was not safe for the entire group, even he still was controlling his horse.
And I think too, for the horse and rider combo, it's not authorized at the horse and rider combination. It's just the rider.
Yeah.
It is recorded which horse you authorized on. That's part of the authorization paperwork, but that's not like doesn't carry forward to say you can only ride that horse.
That's not on our authorization paperwork, but I think it should
isn't it?
be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
It could be a kingdom thing.
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah, and that's a good point to bring this up, because when we do sight riding authorization, then the combo matters. So
Yeah.
if your sight riding authorization would be if you're at an event where you're allowed to ride in a pair of two, normally not by yourself, but if you basically can trail ride through the campsite where you have all the tents up. I mean, there's regulations on it, but we consider you're riding not only in the riding arena, you can ride the site. Then you are authorized for that horse and that rider. Then the combo matters. That's a own, and sometimes it matters maybe for a joust, or so we have for combat authorization for quest and mounted combat where the horse needs to be authorized or cleared safe. If you have a kicking horse, you cannot do melees or stuff like that, obviously.
And not every event that allows sight rides has a sight ride authorization. For example, Mounted War Games does not have a separate authorization, but Gulf Wars does.
Mm-hmm.
So it is kind of event dependent, but if there is one, it will be specific to the horse and rider combo.
So if you have two different horses, you need to get authorized twice.
And if you have a long-term event, or say you're having an event over a long weekend, so people can get more ride time versus their drive time, and that's something you feel that would be beneficial to have at your event, you as an MIC can totally require that. So, we don't do them often, but that doesn't mean they don't need to happen.
And that's a good point to put actually out. So and really maybe I should emphasize this at this point again, as the marshal in charge, you can never limit some of the guidelines that are on it, but you also can add to promote your safety for that.
You can't ever do anything more permissive than your kingdom or SCA requirements, but you can do more restrictive.
Yes. So if you feel like it's a good plan to make sure your horse is okay with partisans and tent and banners and fighting. So when we do fighting in the SCA, there's a lot of metal and sword and screaming and yelling maybe. And for me, it was my horse is scared of fire whips. And for it need to have quite some conversations with my horse to pass elephants, as well as burning whip cracking, because she was terrified about that. But
fortunately, we don't tend to have elephants or burning whips at very many SCA events.
I know, but that's what would be some, if you have stuff like this, if you would know you have something different and your horse might be reacting to, or other horses might be reacting to. Maybe you have falconry there, and a lot of horses might not be used to birds flying that low. I seen high trained horses from the Hofreitschule, and they did a falconry show, and the birds start flapping the wings, and the horse starts spooking because that is different. So if you think it's good to check the horses, even maybe your horse does not need to have a falcon carried on you, but maybe you ride next to that person. always
I'm
think-
currently working with my horse and bells. She is very sensitive and triggered by bells, and we are going to Gulf Wars. And part of the sight ride authorization is ringing bells, but other people have them on their tack. So I'm working on that because I know we will encounter that.
Yeah, so I did banner work today, so because we have that too. So yeah, you're
Another
always
thing that we
thinking
do, another thing that we do have a lot of, which is the only thing that made Manny balk really at the last event I took him to, was just the noise of a piece of rattan hitting a shield while some guys were doing pickups and fighting. It wasn't so much that it wasn't so much the noise, it was where he didn't know where it was coming from at the time. And so I have access to those things. So luckily I just took him out and, just showed him, hey, it's okay. So as long as he can see where it's coming from, he didn't really care. But stuff like that you don't encounter at most horse shows or most horse events. So that's a very different sound, as well as armor. The biggest issue too was guys walking around in their really clanky armor. It's a very different sound. And we have guys in Callantyre that wear a lot of mail, and that sounds like a snake to some horses, mail against plate. And so that's can be a little spooky for some horses, but
carriages.
yeah.
We have carriages at Gulf Wars. Not every horse has seen a carriage because those are dragons following a horse. So yeah,
it's
so
good
these
to
are
think
all
about
great things to
training
think
your
about.
horse to do the thing, but also think about what else you are going to encounter. If you have a horse that you want to do mounted combat with, you can train them to your armor. You probably can't train them to everyone else's armor. You can try to desensitize, but recognize you can't control what other people wear for their armor.
And it's always good. So Kelly, as you're starting out, sometimes it's just nice to show up and introduce your pony to things. I know you have Jordan right there. He has a lot of the stuff you maybe can play with. But a lot of times, like I brought Rose to some of the practices just to see what we are doing. Sometimes it's just nice just to show up and see what is all there and expose your pony to it. And I think you were kind of fine with most of that stuff.
Yeah, he didn't really care about anything. It was more rider error and me not, getting like having a moment of, oh wait, nope, wrong, reins are not working with my hands right now. But other than that, he was fine.
And yeah, and like I said, we're close enough, and I always can come over if Jordan doesn't have stuff. If you want to have more toys to play with, we always can work the stuff out. Okay, real quick back. Go ahead.
I just said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime. So official practices, the big thing really is you have official practices, means you have a marshal and you have insurance. That also means you following SEA guidelines. Paperwork, we will talk about them. Waivers, whatever is required, if you're doing an event, what the site requires, if you need to have any kind of coggins or health certificates or logs doing, if anything happens, you need to go and do an accident or an incident report. You also need to do an event or practice report. And you can do authorizations if your KEO allows it. And you basically can do everything within the SEA guidelines. One of the big things, and I run into that issue sometimes, if you're planning authorizations for something that requires 2 riders to participate in that activity, let's say jousting, mounted combat, quest, you need to have a rider that is already authorized, plus the one to get authorized, plus you need to have that marshal who can authorize on the ground. So there are some things we decided because of limitations of being available. You can marshal while you joust yourself, if you're the only jousting marshal in place. But you cannot authorize a new rider while you are the second rider who's already authorized. You need a second person basically on the ground. You need the authorizing marshal for the 2-rider event because we have multiple ones. You need to have somebody who's a marshal who's authorized in that discipline on the ground while you have an authorized rider participating with that one who wants to be authorized. So that is something when you're planning practices, and I would like to get Jordan authorized in Quest. That's one to grow that one in our kingdom. I need to find a marshal or a rider to help me to get him authorized, because I cannot authorize him while he hits me. So little things when you plan things, make sure you maybe ask somebody else if they're willing to show up. So you have the rider, if he's not a marshal for that, if you can maybe get stuff like that done. That is also something in the planning phase, but it's a little bit more advanced, but sometimes we forget about it. And you cannot have, if you have an official SEA event, you cannot have 2 unauthorized people fighting each other. So if I want, unless you have just a regular practice, but for anything, you need to have that trained, the person to be trained with already who is trained and authorized, at least for us. So I cannot joust, have 2 novices joust each other who never jousted before. They need to fight against somebody who's already authorized. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I don't think it's in the society handbook.
I double check. Oh, you would know because you're reading the rules.
I am. So I don't think it's at society. Also, Ethelmark is the only one I've come across so far that says only someone authorized in a discipline may marshal that discipline. Most kingdoms say once you're a marshal, you can marshal mounted archery, for example, even if you yourself are not authorized in mounted archery. If you feel that you know enough about the safety to be able to see what is safe, you can marshal it, even if you don't do it, even if you are not authorized in it. But Ethelmark says to marshal mounted archery, you must be authorized in mounted archery. They all say in order to authorize someone else, you yourself have to be authorized. But only Ethelmark so far has said you can only observe the safety of an event if you yourself are authorized in that event.
I just wrote this down. I'm gonna run this by Doe, because for me, and I know Ethelmarks, we had some really great linguists who've been working on our guidebook and authorization, and there's been a couple really great scholars who've been working on stuff. So Gosen probably started it. I'm not 100% sure, but she was KEO forever prior or when I joined. And I know she did a lot of groundwork, and she is phenomenal with documentation stuff. Elise, same, that's her job. She's great writing. And I know Terslin added some stuff. But
remember
I think the groundwork is really Gosen.
Remember, the jousting rules may be different because they are administered at corporate level, not at kingdom levels.
Wood jousting, yes.
Wood
Foam
jousting.
jousting, no. Foam joust is at the kingdom level.
Foam is at kingdom level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wood is at society level. So yeah, basically nothing I say applies to wood.
Yeah. And you need to have Euler's approval right now. It used to be Euler or Terrafan. It's Euler right now only. I can recommend, but you need to go through him at the end. Because
yeah, he's the
I'm
only
a wood
one who
jouster,
can
I
authorize.
marshal it, but I can not authorize somebody.
Yeah, Wood has participation marshals and authorizing marshals. Those are separate for Wood.
Mhm.
That concept does not exist for any other type of marshalate.
It has also that elevated risk factor in it.
Of course.
And that's basically what Rosalind also works so greatly on it, crossing state lines, all the different information about different kingdoms. It's good to know. When you do plan an event and you have other people, and I don't know, maybe your kingdom has multiple states in it, interstates, livestock transport, we in the SCA, we are not responsible to doing health certificates unless the site requires it. Or you are the marshal in charge and you have a large event with multiple states coming together with 50 horses or whatever, and you would like to have an extra health, or you want to have health certificate because you have such a large event with multiple horses from different states, you can ask for it. But we as SEA, we normally do not ask for Coggins or health certificates. If you're traveling out of state, you should have a health certificate if you get stopped. And I do assume kind of most of people who do travel with the horses, they have a Coggins. I actually don't really know anybody who is active outside of the barn and has horses, don't have active Coggins test, not even through pandemic. Most of the people I come in contact, we do that annually Coggins test.
I will say that we have had a situation in Callantyre where we had an equestrian event and an individual who is a marshal, who should have known better, did not have an up-to-date Coggins. The event was in the same state that she lived in, so the health certificate wasn't an issue, but her Coggins was. And we have a general consensus in Callantyre that we have a tendency to request negative Coggins and negative health and good health certs if you're traveling out of state. So unfortunately, this individual was not asked to leave like she should have been, but mainly because the SCA doesn't back up that policy. So it's just kind of an unwritten policy. But
well, it's a state law thing. If the state
in
requires
Missouri,
it or the site requires it,
yeah,
we can fall back to that because we're obeying mundane law. But the SCA itself does not take on the liability of checking paperwork.
Right.
So, and I do need to say, for the people I constantly have contact with, and like I go to the same places with my horses most of the time. Nowadays we have that global vet, everything is online. I have all my health certificates on my phone and I basically can email it ahead of time. And if I'm going to the same place 3 times a year, they know already I have my Coggins test and I just have it. And if I do an event again and it would be required and I would check, I normally ask, like pre-pandemic when I did the horse event, I just asked them prior to it from the out of state, can you just email it to me? And I just had everything that I had people from Texas coming and or they were currently in Ohio and then but they lived in Texas and was like, I just would like to have documentation, then I don't need to stress about the day of the event, because we had quite some horses showing up. And that was my first event I was hosting. Electronically, really, I have everything online, health certificates as well as Coggins test. So I think electronic stuff really makes it nice and easy.
Yeah, I'll second the asking for it in advance. It's just so much easier, especially for people you don't know. Maybe they show up and then they don't have Coggins. It's easier to do it ahead of time.
A lot of times I'm not somebody who can just wing things. I like to be organized, and I'm not really good with staying cool and mindful when I'm pulled in too many directions. So if I can check anything off before I get to the busy day, I'm good. So that's also, oh, I delegate because I have awesome people right now with me. Jordan is one of them, where I'm like, here's the clipboard. Can you do the paperwork? And his lady friend Nicole and Jordan are awesome with that. And then they hand me back the clipboards and was like, awesome, thanks for doing it. So as a marshal in charge, delegation, deputies, it's awesome to have. Don't think if you're a marshal in charge, you need to do everything by yourself. And I think it was one of those, oh, it's the last thing I had here, but I think it's something we talk next time about it as well. Delegate. You as a marshal in charge, you're responsible for site inspections, insurance, paperwork, getting all the waivers done. You do not have to do everything. You don't have to do the entire activity schedule, running everything around it. Learn to delegate and say no. Ask people to do other things.
Sorry, that's not for you, Gesa. That's just me trying to talk to the Atlantean.
Oh, okay. I was just trying to read and was like, okay, but I'm interested in the rules because and I'm not sure if I mentioned that, because I am a deputy for the SEO. So I'm kind of helping just out with Doe, and this allows me to do this on society level. Stuff we talk about it and questions to bring up. One of those things would be like having those one experienced rider against an unexperienced rider, or to marshal it, shouldn't you at least know the activity? Questions, if we should include something like this in the society rules, as well as like for the ground crew authorizations. And even if it's not a requirement, I like the suggestions we had out, as in the Marshal tools, what to check for authorizations or anything else, or any suggestion for logs. If we have guidelines available to us and no kingdom needs to reinvent the wheel because somebody has it already, like Antio has it already, how awesome is it if we can share it? Ed, you had another question?
Yeah, on the authorization that you can't authorize somebody or oversee somebody in the weapons form. We had that in the rules 30 years ago, and it became way too cumbersome and was really restrictive. And when in 2000, or I guess it was 90 something, they changed that. It made things a lot easier. So from ancient history, we tried that. There was some problems with that. And that's why we didn't do that. A marshal is a marshal because a marshal is a marshal. They need to take responsibility and know the games that they're overseeing. And if they don't, they shouldn't be a marshal.
Well, may I know, and I don't know if you know our situation, I don't want to throw you out like this, an example really what that issue would be, because I could see if I am not a jouster, would I know the risk factors when I'm marshalling a joust? Would I know what to look for or anything? That's basically where
Well,
I'm going for the specialty authorizations, like the archery, the combat, the jousting. Any of those examples, what you may, or do you have examples where it was an issue?
yes, several events over the years back then, we couldn't have the activity because nobody was there to
Marshal it.
we had people that were authorized to do it, but we didn't have a marshal authorized to do it. And the MIC for it wasn't authorized to do it. Therefore, a planned activity couldn't happen because the guy that was going to do it didn't show up. So that's one of the reasons they changed that rule so that a marshal is a marshal. And they need to learn enough safety, it's just like you take a Western writer, can he look at a set of English TAC and know what is safe and what is unsafe? Or an English writer, can they look at? If you're a marshal, you need to educate yourself enough to know what the games are, what the rules are, what's safe and what is unsafe. That's part of becoming a marshal.
So for me, that makes sense. But I, as a writer, English or Western or whatever style, I would not feel comfortable inspecting a harness in a chariot and saying that wheel is safe or that whatever harness is safe and clipped on correctly or not.
That's one of the things we're debating right now with the new set of driving rules that we're working on as a committee group is, do we need special marshals for driving? And if we do, that's a problem, because now what that does is create restrictions for an existing equestrian activity. We may have 8 or 9 people that are authorized to drive in the kingdom. I think we've got 7 right now, with 2 more that are looking to do it. And one of those is a marshal. But if we're going to have driving at our championship or at any event, and we got special authorization, that's a problem. So it's one of the things that I'm looking at is, how do we train marshals so that they do feel comfortable in making those rulings? Or if they don't, they can find somebody that does.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Sure, Kathleen, can you talk?
That would be one time with driving and how things happen with driving and how the potential is to spook a horse and et cetera, et cetera. My recommendation is that there is no authorizations at a championship. The authorization should be done at a practice or something before that event,
But
because
if
at a championship, there's just too many things happening.
that's not what I meant. If you go that the activity cannot be done without a marshal that's authorized in that activity, that shuts that activity down if there's no marshal there for it, even though you may have an equestrian marshal on site in running the events.
So you're just saying that you need a marshal. You're saying that you don't need a driving marshal to run a driving event at an activity or at I'm sorry, let me try that again. You don't need a driving marshal to run a driving activity at an event if
We're saying
everybody
there's
that is
no such
already
thing as
there
a
is going to be
driving marshal.
authorized.
We're saying a marshal is a marshal. And
We're-
if you are a marshal and you feel that you know enough about driving to see how it is safe, it doesn't matter if you are authorized in driving or not.
You still can marshal it.
You still can marshal it even if you're not authorized. But nobody can force you to marshal something where you don't feel that you know. Nobody can say to Geisa, well, too bad, you're a marshal, you have to authorize driving even though you don't think you're safe with it.
Right.
I agree that you don't have to authorize somebody if you don't feel safe with it or organize it.
That's basically what we were talking about. So I am authorized for driving. I got authorized last year, but it's just I'm not doing it. I'm a rider primarily. I don't hitch enough. I probably could figure it out. I have enough horse sense, but it's not something I do in my sleep, and I would be like easily. Hopefully with Red being at Golf Wars, maybe I get an opportunity. I hope oh yeah, Kathleen, I'm gonna spoil Red at Golf Wars if you haven't heard. I don't know if you heard.
I'm sorry, you're gonna do what?
Red's coming to golf and Geisa gets to play with him all week.
Oh, you're taking Red to Golf Wars. Oh, good.
And I'm gonna help. I'm gonna spoil him and give him a lot of treats so he finally gets some roundness on him.
I think he's doing better at this new place, I heard. I don't know.
Yeah, his muscling looks much better. He doesn't need any more roundness.
I was teasing. All of my horses are well rounded.
He was always known as the big red couch.
But I'm excited to see the handsome boy.
He's a good boy.
But Ed, for back to you, if you do those discussions, I would like to to know how it works, because that is something we have in our kingdom a lot. So, and really how to do that with all the different authorizations, because really just on how to navigate all of that. For me, it really would be, I'm a safety thing. I'm really trying to be safe. It's just one of my first things prior to SCA. When I became involved with horses, safety was always an issue for me, or not an issue, but put out in front. We need to be safe to make sure our riders and horses and we are all okay and have fun. So if I would be in charge, or if I would be the one training marshals, and I feel sometimes some of the newer individuals growing up into that position might not be comfortable to say, I don't want to
And then I got
authorize,
another
or I don't want to marshal
No.
that, because I might feel intimidated. So where to find that comfort level? So I'm really interested in those discussions. How can we do that and still maintain our safety? Because if things happening within our SCA, because we're trying not to shut down programs, we could lose, and so the stuff happens. And that's one of the things, if stuff happens and then the insurance looks in it and was like, well, that Marshal had like no business doing this. He's not authorized. He's never jousted. He never hit somebody with a stick. How can be he in charge of that event? So that's where I'm going. What would be with the devil's advocate if something went wrong, and hopefully avoiding we would be shut down with that.
Yep, that's why we're debating that issue.
Yeah, so if you can keep me updated, I would be really interested, especially on how you find solutions for that, because that's a
Well,
difficult part about it.
As an alternative, do you think that having an authorized rider along with a marshal, so more or less have it as a pair, would be beneficial, so that you have somebody with the knowledge base and then somebody with the experience of marshaling an event pair up together, so that it can be a knowledgeable front instead of just it being a sole entity?
Well, it has to be a sole entity signing off on everything. That's just the way the system works. But with driving, my solution that one of the solutions I'm looking at is going outside of the SCA in pulling rules in the Pacific Northwest 4-H group has a really, really great set of guidelines for driving, which outlines not only what equipment to use, how to check the equipment, how to train your horse for it, safety rules, and so on. And I'm looking at at our responsibility if we reference that as one of the training aids for people to use.
And
Because the nice thing there is that is a well-seen, well-regulated, well-run program of a different organization. And if we're doing best practices out of that organization, we should have double coverage then from a legal standpoint, because the best practices are well proven.
And I'm sorry, I can't remember. Somebody asked me a couple months ago about information. Did you ask me about the CAA level 1 driving proficiency?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was the only thing that I would say about 4-H. It depends on what state you're in as far as their rules. And the only thing that gets funky back and forth between everybody is the overhead checks. Some states require them, some states don't. Open driving, we typically do not require them. Some breeds require them, some don't. I think if you decide not to require an overhead check, other than that, there's nothing wrong with 4-H rules and using those as a standard.
So that's where we're at. Any help on it would be appreciated from anybody. Send me comments.
Okay. That's all I had for today. Did anybody, Maria, you have your hand up, sorry.
Oh, I'm just saying goodbye. I actually have to go, but I wanted to mention real quick that if you will be at Gulf Wars, I will be teaching a lecture class on Monday morning at the Arts and Sciences area. That is event equestrian logistics specifically geared for event stewards. I will be going to my very first Battlemore this coming year, which I'm really, really excited about. I've been in the SCA a long time and have never gone to Battlemore because of other event conflicts, but I'm finally prioritizing that. So if that's something that if there are any Outlanders going to Gulf and they want to sit in on that class, or if they want to take a look at my handout and see if that's something that they would like me to teach there at Battlemore, that would be great. Just let me know. Anyway, but thank you guys very much.
And take me to your meeting or to your class. I'll go with you.
Okay, good. It'll be in the morning.
And
we'll be the only two awake.
I'm awake. I might get up early. Don't worry about that.
Okay, good deal.
Maria, I think there was one person already who said, oh, it would be so great to have a class on inviting equestrians to your event at Battlemore. So you should totally do that.
Well, I'll get a hold of whoever I need to get a hold of and see if that's something that would work well for them. And I totally don't mind doing that. But anyway, good night, everyone.
See ya, thanks.
See ya, bye.
Okay. Skady, I think I saw your chat in there. You had a question. Can you unmute and just ask?
If not, okay, if not, I can read it, but if she's here, that's fine.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just cooking dinner and stuff. My questions were mostly about like the site walkthrough. Were those, like, when you do the walkthrough and you're looking for potholes and all that stuff, is that stuff that you would do after a site's already been chosen, or like should you be doing that when a bid goes in? And then, like, if a site isn't equestrian friendly but we want to have equestrian there, like, what can we do about it after the fact, after a site's been picked?
Well, if the site is not allowing equestrians or any kind of pets, you obviously cannot host equestrian activities at that site.
Well, she's saying, what if you find that it's not safe?
Yeah, if it's not suitable, like if the site doesn't care if there's horses, but there's a bunch of potholes and a bunch of other things, like, do we have any authority to say, hey, like, this site isn't going to work?
I would put it out into the site announcement. So if you know already you would never put horses there and you don't feel qualified or feel okay to host equestrian activities there, put it out there. Let everybody know that we are allowed, but it's not suitable, therefore no equestrian activities at that event.
Okay.
Put it in the event announcement so they know. And again, I always make pictures about what I'm talking about. So it's not just like a little dent in the ground. It is a foot-long pothole, ankle-breaking, dangerous area. So I always make pictures and say, this is what it is. That's my opinion. And if I know I don't want to bring my horses there, there's no way, I would probably just not offer equestrian activity.
Okay, and then, like, so I'm in Aidenbelt and we're literally just getting equestrian started. And so, like, we're looking a couple of years out at having stuff, and they're asking for bids for sites. So, like, should we be getting with people who are doing those bids to make sure that sites that they're offering are good, or is that something that we would do after a site has been chosen and then just kind of hope that it's equestrian friendly?
Here in Ontario, the procedure.
Go ahead, Ed.
Here in Ontario, the procedure is that an autocrat that is putting in a bid for, say, a crown event they will put a team together before they do this. And that team, if there's going to be equestrian activities, will include a marshal in charge. And that marshal in charge is responsible to go yes or no. And if they go no, there's no activities at that event because it's unsafe. And that is one of our autocrating requirements, is that they put those teams together. So if your kingdom is just getting equestrian started, get that out to the autocrats that they need. If they're going to have equestrian doing bids, they have to have people.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure if that's the same here. They basically just post bids are due and then people submit bids. I don't think there's any kind of, I mean, maybe there is people putting together teams and I just don't know about it, but that's something that I'll ask.
So what I started doing, because I'm trying to promote the equestrian program in Ethelmark, I basically we have the Facebook page for Ethelmark. I basically say, hey, you're planning, and I started that last fall. Hey, you're planning to do an event. Let's include horses. This is what we need. If you're willing to have a horse, and if it's not an event, just have like a mounted procession, or make pictures with the horses or something. If you want to include the horse, call me. If you're not sure what to look for, give me a call. This is what we're looking for. So I just openly pastured all of our autocrats. Hey, I'm the equestrian. I want horses. They're probably all rolling eyes when they hear my name by now. But this is how we put up other people, including equestrian. And I think we have 4 different ones this year. I think that's the first time since I'm in Ethelmark, that we have 4 times equestrian involved in official events.
Okay, that makes sense.
So
I just put up a checklist for autocrats that are going to have equestrian events. And this is also a checklist for doing events. So you can take a look at that.
Ooh. Okay, thank you.
I did not.
Or you can be really extra like Maria and do her Google map where she found all these good sites all across the kingdom of Callantyr, and then just published that and said, if you want to do horses, pick one of these sites.
Yeah, I like that a lot. We kind of already have that stuff already in our little group, so just making that public essentially to the rest of the kingdom is.
Get in touch with the leadership of different big baronies where those are and say, we'd love to have horses. Here are sites that we could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And Ed, is that a common thing that kingdoms have checklists for autocrats?
We're putting it together right now and publishing it out from the equestrian marshalate, and we're sending it out to all of the autocrats of the kingdom. We have a special Facebook group for the autocrats, so we're just putting it on that group. Just to give them an idea, it's all about education. One of the other requirements that I'm making for my marshals in Ontario is if you're the marshal in charge at an event, you have to run a class of how to be around horses for the SCA members that are equestrian mundanes, as I call them. Mm-hmm. Because we need to educate the populace of how to be around our horses. We can talk all day long about safety in this, but there's a other side of that coin. They have to recognize when they're creating an unsafe situation for our horses. And if we start teaching classes and show them how to be around horses safely, they'll be more responsive for us to come up and watch the fighting, for us to come up to the Eric Dern courts and do things, and we'll have more activities. And it's just us taking responsibility and doing that education.
I love that. So
and then
when you do that class, do you do it right at the beginning of your event?
Usually the first full day of the event, because 99% of our events are camping events. Okay. So like Saturday morning is when I'll hold the class. Originally, it was specifically focused for children. of how to get children there, to get them involved in what's going on, seeing what's going on, because they are the biggest problem we have with equestrian, because horses and kids go together. And we need to teach them how to be around our horses and how to be around our horses safely. And then that's a great combination. And now I'm expanding it out to just people, everybody. You know, how do you approach a horse? Most people don't know you. You know, they think, well, you can walk up from the back end, which is the totally wrong way to do it. You know, and if we talk to them and teach them and work with them and get them more comfortable, we'll all be happier.
If you have already training in for that education, do you mind to forward that to me?
I don't have it written down. I will work on writing it down for you, though.
Okay, yeah.
I can give me a couple months and then poke me.
Sure, but because I think that would be great even to do a little Zoom class to reach out. Not everybody might watch it, but sometimes people have nothing to do in the evening and they do a YouTube. Not that I want to be on YouTube all the time, but I think those are great things maybe we can do to get the word out. I love that education part.
Well, when we first started horses in the SCA, 35, 40 years ago, we were really concerned with safety, and we said it way too often, way too strongly, that horses are dangerous. We forgot the other side of that equation. Yes, horses are dangerous, but there are mitigating things and ways to approach it where they're not dangerous, where there are safe practices. And we forgot to really push those safe practices all along. And I'm just learning from my mistakes and going, let's do these safe practices. Let's teach people. And the good thing about that is we get more SCA people that way.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if Reinmar has a talk with the Page School before he brings them down to the equestrians at Gulf Wars. You know how he brings the kids down every year and like has them do their like mini challenge course. I wonder if he talks to them about how to be safe before he does that.
I don't know, but you could.
I think they had some kind of lecture required. I couldn't imagine him not to.
Right. So he might also have content, Gesa. He's very good at writing things down.
So we used to be able to save the chat. Why can I no longer save the chat as a file?
Should
Maybe
be able to
that's
just
all the new computer setting, because I would like to save some of those information in it.
Select all and cut and paste.
I tried that and it will not go. But I tried
It seems like it's saving for me, Gase. If I can send you the text.
Let me see. I tried one more time.
It's like a little ...
And I only get Facebook group. I don't get the entire link. Unfortunately. Yeah, if you can save it, I'll get it from you, or you can email it to me, because I like just to keep a record of some of that stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesomeness. Okay. I love the discussion. Sometimes I feel like we are redundant with the topics, but each time we do it, we get new ideas. And I think it's so awesome just to do this. So I appreciate that input, and I love the additions of the ground crew and really trying to do that MOL and training maybe for an MOL for equestrians. The Google sites, the authorizations with the riders and the education part. I think that is huge. Really.
One of the things you'll appreciate, my wife and I made baldricks for our ground crew. And the baldricks for the ground crew have horse prints going up. And the first rule is look at your baldric, realize that can happen to you, and you're responsible for your safety.
That's so cute.
But it also identifies your ground crew real easily, so you can see who is ground crew and so on. But it goes into the education of what's the first responsibility of a ground crewman? Your safety.
Yeah.
And never trust a horse and rider.
Never catch or touch a horse, you know.
No,
unless
never
you really have to.
trust. Never trust a horse and rider. You can trust the horses. Don't trust the rider.
So awesome. Well, thanks a lot. If nobody else has a question, we almost made it. It's 9 o'clock. That would be one of the first we end on time. I think Christmas party was done on time too, but otherwise, I think we always go like 2.5 hours.
Bye.
So Gesa, are you going to ask Doe about requirements that at practice you don't have non-authorized people combating against each other? I think it's a bad idea, honestly. Like, obviously for the joust, you should use your brain. Should not have 2 unauthorized people joust against each other. But if you're going to say that for like mounted combat or whack bonk on armored mounted combat, then okay, I can't do that in North Shield. We don't have enough authorized people.
And we don't have enough in the Applemark either. I'm like looking to find, so Jordan and I am authorized, but
So I think we need to be really careful with
Atlantia.
regulating these things. Regulating might be too strong. Just don't be dumb. Be careful, marshals.
So what I do, she gets a summary of what we discuss and questions and pointers. And I don't think she will have time for anything prior to Gulf Wars. So I assume when we're sitting down there, that might be something we will just discuss on an evening we have nothing else to do. So it's normally not, oh yeah, we need to change this or we're doing this. It's primarily, these are things it's good to be aware of. And if the SEL says at the end, yeah, that's fine and that's good. For me, it's covering my own backside because I know about this is not a rule. Now we had an incident, insurance didn't cover because nobody was authorized and educated. Therefore, now insurance says we are not liable. We're closing the program down. It needs to be investigated. And they say, yeah, but Lady Gesa knew. And I'm just like, yeah, I knew, and I gave it to the next person in charge. If she says, yeah, that is fine, and kingdom level can do that, and if you think you're fine, you can deal with that. If she thinks maybe we need formulate it differently, make your best choices.
Yeah, I wonder if something like somebody there has to be authorized would be better than, you know, everybody participating or some rule about two people who are not authorized cannot engage with one another. Yeah, but we say somebody has to be authorized.
Somebody needs to know or knowledgeable or proficient and comfortable to some extent, you know. I think just it opens up so many liabilities if we just would say like, I basically, and I don't know if you're authorized in any of that, hey, you know, let's just go and get some sticks and some shield and let's do some mounted combat. It will be awesome to bang on each other, you know. We have heavy armor or something. And I'll just ride up to you and I bang you in your face so hard you're falling backwards off your horse, holding on to your reins. Your horse flips over. And then I was like, what do you mean I was not allowed to hit you in the face? I stabbed you? Or, you know, or, oh, I wasn't able to hit down and hit your horse's butt on my way down? What do you mean it's not okay? You know, I was just like, common sense, sometimes it's not common. Theoretically, say we're all adults and maybe we should think before we do that. We love our horses. But I've seen some crazy stuff in my life. I'm old, you know. I've been around the block once or twice. And that's why
let's talk about it with Doe at Gulf.
Yeah, and I was just like, we just need to have somebody who knows some regulations. Yeah. That's where I'm going. Sure. So, and yeah, I'm gonna go and put it out and then we will see.
Great.
And you will know because you put it in the rule book. Okay. Awesome, guys. Thanks for
Real quick,
participating.
hey, real quick, I'm also from Aidenveld here. Just to add to that real quick, what if we don't have anybody marshaled for like jousting or mounted combat? How do we even go about starting that? Do we need to go like back out to Outlands and ask, hey, can we train with you guys and get
Well,
somebody? Or
So at Envelt, do you just use the society regulations, or do you have a kingdom specific handbook?
right now we're using the society rule book.
According to the society, if you are a marshal, you are allowed to marshal an activity you are not authorized in. You cannot authorize somebody new if you yourself are not authorized in that, but you can marshal it. If you have, let's say you have 2 authorized jousters and they're the only authorized jousters in the kingdom, you have 3 other marshals, but they are not authorized in jousting. If those other 3 marshals are comfortable that they know enough to be safe, those other 3 marshals could all marshal a joust between the 2 authorized jousters, but they would not be able to authorize anybody new. Does that make sense?
Right. The problem, we just don't have anybody authorized to do the jousting.
Okay.
Is the
So to
You
get
need-
authorized, you can go to another kingdom with your KEO's permission. You can
Yeah.
go to one other kingdom and get authorized in a thing where your kingdom has no program for it because you have no one authorized who could
But-
authorize others.
Make sure if you are planning for an out of kingdom authorization that your KEO and the KEO from that kingdom you're getting authorized in both have to approve that prior of you getting authorized.
Yes.
And
Okay,
the
thank you.
KEO has the right to say no, which we're trying not to encourage.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to get a little bit of extra clarification with how it was sounding with everything. Like, oh, you have to have somebody, to even type thing. Thank you.
Yeah. At the society level, a marshal can marshal anything, but only someone authorized in that thing can authorize a marshal authorized in that thing can authorize others. That's the society level. Ethelmark has more strict requirements.
Yeah. And so for the large events like the golf wars we've been talking about, those are great events to get authorized in something that your kingdom does not participate in. Back to my good old days when I got started, I actually went to Atlanta to get authorized into jousting with the KEO approval because nobody was actively jousting in my kingdom at that time. Best thing is really if you have limited people right now because you're just starting out, as I know, really have a good connection to your KEO. Really work with that individual and really go for that.
Did that answer your questions?
No, it does. And our KEO's, future KEO is probably shaking her head while trying to eat right now. So their head, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. And you're really close. What's your next big city around where you are?
We've already had members head out to Outlands for authorizations. So we already have a good repertoire with them.
They're
Okay.
a good group. Yeah.
Outlands
Go
are
hang out with
awesome.
them.
And it's the biggest thing is, and again, and depends on where you are with getting everything started. By guidelines, your KEOs need to pre-approve, but if they're working with you, you need to get started somehow. So we made it past 9 o'clock. We were not able to finish on time, as always. If you have no other questions, you're good to go. And thanks for the questions. Actually, I do like it because that's how we learn. And thanks for helping answering. It's not just me. And otherwise, I'll see you next month, it's first Tuesday of the month. I forgot. I think it's March 1st, actually.
No, it'll be
So,
same as this month, March 7th. It'll be the week before Gulf Wars.
the week before go. I have nothing else to do. Tuesdays is actually a good day for me because I'm not teaching on Tuesday. I have the daytime off, and that's my only scheduled thing I have on Tuesdays. So it's kind of cool. Okay, have an awesome evening, and I'll see you next month. See you
Thanks,
guys.
Geisa. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Sure, Kelly. Love to that you made it. I hope it was helpful for you.
Yes, it's a lot of good background information that whenever you don't know, you don't know. So at least that it allows me to be a little bit more educated.
Did you ever get the handbook? Were you ever able to access it? That would explain a lot. Those most people who attend here, they are longer in the SEA and participating in it. My assumptions. Some of them I don't know. But as you just started, like not even a year ago, really to look at the society level. So when we talk about the society level, that means for the entire organization of the SCA, and then we have kingdom levels.
And that's Ethelmark.
And that's Ethelmark for you.